There's more and more evidence showing that Apple's newest iPhone isn't doing as well as the older ones in China. This is a huge problem for Apple because China is a very important market for them. Apple's sales have been slowing down for a while now, and it's not getting any better. This is the third quarter in a row where their sales have gone down, and they don't think it's going to change in the near future. If sales keep going down this quarter, it would be the longest period of declining sales in 20 years, which is a big problem for the company. In this video, we'll explain why Apple is selling fewer products, and we'll also explore if Apple leaving China is a good idea. Before you keep watching, please subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more videos about what's going on in Asia. China's iPhone sales hit hard by Huawei's resurgence. In the last quarter, Apple made $81.8 billion in revenue, which is 1.4% less than before. They say this is partly because they made more money from their services, but the demand for iPhones wasn't as strong as they thought. The iPhone is their most important product, and its sales went down by 2.4% to $39.7 billion in the last quarter. The iPad also didn't do well, with a 20% drop in sales. In fact, in the third quarter of 2023, most major smartphone brands didn't perform well in China, except for Huawei. Huawei became the fastest growing smartphone company in China during this period because they introduced a new smartphone with a very advanced chip. This growth is pushing Huawei closer to becoming one of the top 5 smartphone makers in China by market share once again. Huawei's smartphone sales in China increased by 37% compared to the previous year. They now hold a 12.9% market share, which is up from 9.1% in the same quarter last year. On the other hand, Honor, the biggest smartphone maker by market share, only saw a 3% increase in sales. Vivo, Oppo, and Apple all experienced significant double-digit declines, according to Counterpoint Research. Huawei, which used to be the world's largest smartphone maker, faced a decline in its market share and business due to various U.S. sanctions that began in 2019. These sanctions prevented Huawei from accessing essential technologies, especially semiconductors. However, in September, Huawei launched a new phone in China called the Mate 60 Pro. This phone came with a highly advanced 7nm chip and 5G connectivity, which were technologies the US sanctions had aimed to prevent Huawei from using. This release generated a lot of interest among Chinese consumers. In the first 6 weeks, Huawei sold 1.6 million units of this phone, contributing to Huawei's recent growth. Huawei was the main competitor for Apple in the high-end smartphone market in China for a long time. Its return could pose new challenges for Apple in China. Analysts also mentioned that if Huawei incorporates its new chip into some mid to lower-end phones, the company could capture market share from other players and potentially rejoin the top 5 smartphone makers. In 2022, China's smartphone market saw a 14% decline in shipments compared to the previous year due to strict pandemic measures and weak consumer spending. However, the shipments of smartphones for the third quarter of this year decreased by 5% year-on-year in China, suggesting that the worst might be over. Apple made several significant upgrades to its lineup with the iPhone 15, but these improvements haven't led to growth in the largest global mobile market. China is a critical market for Apple, accounting for approximately 20% of its revenue, second only to the United States. However, increasing tensions between the US and China have placed Apple in a delicate position. Beijing is extending a ban on the use of iPhones within certain government-backed agencies and state-owned enterprises. In response, the American company has been exploring strategies to reduce its dependence on Chinese manufacturing by expanding production operations into regions such as India and Southeast Asia. The long-term consequences of this shift remain uncertain. Recently, Beijing initiated an investigation into taxes and land use related to Foxconn, Apple's primary iPhone assembler, further complicating its relationship with China. Could India become Apple's primary market? Earlier this year, Apple inaugurated its first 2 retail stores in India, even though it's been a major player in the world's second-largest smartphone market for over 25 years. Experts believe that India is at a turning point, similar to where China was in July 2008 when Apple opened its first store there. Apple's sales in India in the past year, up to March 31st, have grown by roughly 50%, reaching nearly $6 billion. However, this still only accounts for 1.6% of Apple's total revenue and about 8% of what the company earns in Greater China. All of this is happening while Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, is pushing its suppliers like Foxconn Technology Group, Wistron Corporation, and Pegatron Corporation to increase their production in India. Apple's presence in India is relatively small, at about 4% of the country's nearly 700 million smartphone users. Cheaper local brands, as well as Chinese and South Korean manufacturers, dominate this vast mobile market. As of now, the iPhone maker has 272 physical stores in the US, 45 in China, 39 in the United Kingdom, 28 in Canada, 22 in Australia, 20 in France, and now only 2 in India. On the bright side, Apple ranked first in unit sales of devices priced above $365 last year. Tim Cook has been optimistic about India for years, and now Apple is making a big bet on this South Asian giant as it diversifies away from China and expands its operations in India. Nonetheless, many analysts believe that Apple's reliance on China will persist for several years. India has the potential to become a major hub for Apple production, but it might take up to a decade to fully materialize. Apple still maintains a strong presence in China due to its supply chain partners, and China's infrastructure capabilities are currently superior to what India offers. Apple's efforts to shift some of its product assembly away from China became more pressing in the last 5 years due to heightened US-China trade tensions. The company had to reduce production in China because of geopolitical issues, which negatively impacted its financial results. Nevertheless, Apple's growth in India has just begun, and there are numerous opportunities for both manufacturing and retail sales in the country. India is the second largest smartphone market globally in terms of annual shipments and sales, accounting for almost 12% of the global market. Apple already manufactures 5% to 7% of its iPhones in India, a significant increase from just 1% in 2021. And there are further plans to enhance its presence in the country. Whether India can completely replace China as Apple's primary production hub remains uncertain. Given the cost scales, logistical challenges, and the well-established supplier ecosystem in China, it's highly unlikely that Apple can entirely disengage from China. The future of Apple in China. While many people assume that Apple products are manufactured in China due to its lower labor costs, this is only part of the story, and it's becoming a smaller part as Apple's assembly partners increasingly adopt automated processes. Initially, Steve Jobs shifted most of Apple's manufacturing to China because it was the only country with a well-established supply chain network and the ability to rapidly scale up production. Several key factors make China, particularly the Shenzhen area, a potent manufacturing hub. First, Shenzhen's strategic location as the gateway between mainland China and Hong Kong makes it one of the world's major shipping centers with a massive container port. Second, the Chinese government designated Shenzhen as the first special economic zone in the country. Special economic zones are designed to promote business growth through relaxed planning regulations, attractive tax incentives, and, importantly, to encourage foreign investment in local companies. This supportive environment, along with its geographical advantages, has fueled Shenzhen's rapid growth. And third, Apple relies on an extensive network of suppliers and subcontractors, many of which produce individual components. Most of these partners are based in Shenzhen and its vicinity, simplifying the logistics of bringing everything together for assembly. However, those are straightforward reasons why Apple chose China. Just recently, Apple CEO Tim Cook pointed out why Apple prefers to make iPhones in China. And these were his words.
There's a confusion about China and let me at least give you my opinion. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling. And the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here. You know, in the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. It's that vocational expertise is very deep, very, very deep here. And I give the education system a lot of credit for continuing to push on that, even when others were de-emphasizing vocational. Now I think many countries in the world have woke up and said, you know, this is a key thing, and we've got to correct that. But China called that right from the beginning.
What do you think will happen to Apple in China? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section below. If you enjoy our content, please give it a thumbs up to show your support. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging videos.